Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Grassroots Racer. Um, Today's episode is going to be pretty good. We interviewed a lady who's on the other side of the fence, so she's not racing cars necessarily. She actually is on the other side of the fence, and she does a lot of data analyst, and she cares about her drivers a lot when she works with different teams and whatnot. She is planning on jumping into a car at some point, but for now, she's really focused on her data analyst job. And yeah, it was a great interview. So remember, guys, make sure you like, share, and subscribe, and enjoy this episode of Grassroots Racer.
So let's talk to our guest this week in Jess May. So Jess, how did you first get involved in motorsport and what sort of inspired you to get involved?
So my start to motorsport has not been conventional compared to others. Most people start motorsport with proper race cars or watching supercars, all of that. But about 10, 11 years ago, my dad went out and bought a remote control car. And basically from there, I was out every other weekend with him at our local track, Mitchell Park, or at Hobby Habit, which is our indoor track here used to be our indoor track here in South Australia. Um, and basically, I used to just go along and I'd watch him and I'd watch how much fun he had. And then I would pick up a controller and I would just start bashing essentially. It wasn't until 2016, 2017 when I really started taking everything seriously. In 2016, we had a massive renovation at our track. And I went from just driving one car to, driving two types of cars and going from doing club meetings to racing at a state title, which have been evidently I got second place in the two-wheel drive junior stock. And then from there on out, it was traveling to Mildura and Keilor every 6, 12 months, racing at big events, seeing people, trying all these different things, racing different categories for me to be able to get my foot in the door with motorsport. And it wasn't until earlier last year when I met my current partner, Matthew Titani, when I really started getting back into motorsport properly. I've always kind of had the interest in cars and things, but yeah, once I met Matt and then I started getting into the XL racing, and basically it's where I am now is because of him and what I've been doing with the XLs. And traveling around with him, which has been quite a change from the last 10 years of my life, really.
Yeah, that's awesome. And it's so great that you eventually managed to find your seat in racing. And it all started back with the remote control cars. So, what sort of skills did that sort of thing teach you? Because I know you do a bit of mechanical work. So it's really simple with remote control cars. And is that where you sort of started? Did you start tinkering with the cars to make them faster? Or, yeah, have you got a different story?
Yeah. So it was really for 6 to 7 years of it, I just let dad do a lot of it because I didn't really want to do it. I just wanted to go to the racetrack. I wanted to race and I wanted to see the friends. And that was it. I didn't want to put any of the hard work in on the cars. And yeah, it wasn't until a couple of years ago when dad started turning around to me and said, "You need to start doing your own work on your cars." So, okay. So basically, I can do everything that you can do in a full scale car. So I can change your cambers, your ride heights. There's so much you can change that affects the cars in the same way which it does with a full size car, essentially. So I've been able to come into this being able to apply what I know with the small 1/10 cars into full size 1-to-1 cars, which has really helped me out a lot with the fact that I'm not coming into this blind. I do have a bit of a experience in what I'm doing, and I'm not just coming into it going, oh, I have to learn everything. Do have that little bit of a technical background as well. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. And from the remote control cars, you slowly progressed up. What what sort of what was the transition to cars like? Because I know it's not the easiest thing to sort of get to, but how do you sort of jump from something as simple as RC cars into something as complex as the world of, motorsports and big racing cars?
Yeah, well, for me, I actually don't race the cars myself
Yeah.
as of yet. That's a whole nother story for later. But being trackside and being able to do the mechanical side of things, looking at the data, running the teams, running the cars on the headsets, that's something that I've loved doing because of how hands-on it is, and I can be quite hands-on and do things while I'm not actually driving a car. And I've always loved being hands-on, getting into it. And that's the thing with like remote control cars is the way that our events work is you go up and you do qualifying. So you're up there, you're racing for 5 minutes, and then you have to go down and you have to be out on the track marshalling for 5 minutes. So you have to be quite hands-on in that period of time. So that for me was being able to like transition to be able to hands-on from the little cars to big cars, and I can do it how I want to and work with people and network and all that sort of thing.
Yeah. No, I understand what you're saying. And do you also do do you jump on the headset as well, or do you just sort of do what's done in the garage?
Yeah, so I've started working with Simon Wills with CARMA Racing, and basically learning how to run a team, look at data, run on the headset, run a car on a race weekend. And that has been a real stepping stone. Having that mentor has been really great in being able to learn lots of things. Because we went to Bathurst earlier this year for the 6 hour, and I was on Matt's headset for qualifying and the races. And that was a huge like step for me because I had never done that. I had seen people do it, but I had never actually done it myself. And it was definitely a different experience because of course it's Bathurst. Like it's the most iconic racetrack in Australia. And for me, it was my first time there. It was my first time running a team, essentially being team manager. And it was just a real stepping stone. And then I came back to Adelaide and we had round 3 with the XLs out at Malala. And that's when I started working with Kim Anderson from Everywhere Racing. And he's been my driver, and we've been learning together, and he's been helping me and I've been helping him. And so for me, the change has been really different, and be able to get hands-on has been really good with all of that, and learning so much every single time I'm out at the track. And of course, getting the guidance from Simon, because he's been running the 86 team with Jaden Wanzak this year. And then I've been here running the XL side. So it's been really good.
Yeah, that actually sounds really awesome. And I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that you're also really switched on when it comes to the data analytics, since that's what you studied. So
I'm currently studying data analytics at Adelaide University. And when I have the time to do it, just because I'm so busy, like I've got my part-time job essentially, racing and then uni, I've always loved looking at data and analysing and that sort of thing. And so I like being able to sit down with a driver afterwards and say, well, you need to change your gear shift location, or your gear shifts aren't quick enough, or driver 1 is braking too early compared to you, and be able to talk to the driver and see them improve over time. I've loved watching that. And I think it was round 4 at Tailem Bend, watching drivers improve their times and all of that, just because I was able to give them that little bit of a clue as to where they were slower on the track or where they needed improvement. And that's been really like uplifting, is being able to watch people improve like that.
Yeah, it's always good when you're able to look at the data and sort of go over what you've just done, because actually at the moment my data thing's not working, but that's a different thing. But yeah, when you can come in and have a look at your data, it's really good to see where you can improve. Sometimes I don't like it, I'll be honest. When my brother comes in, he's like, oh, you're doing this and this wrong when he's looking at the data, but it is what it is. It actually does help you get quicker. If you're sitting at the screen and you're looking at visibly, you can visibly see that it's quicker to do something else. It's worth giving it a try, which is something I love to do. I always love to get quick on the track, because that's how you win.
Yeah, and there's been a couple of times where I've been sitting there and I've been bored, so I just get the data up, and one of my friends, Riley, I think I was at uni and I was bored and I shouldn't have been doing it, and I was just sending him messages going, Malawa, you need to change this, you need to change that, and he's at work going, what are you on about? And I'm like, I'm just looking at it because I need to do something right now, and I'm teaching myself these little things because it's the only way you're going to learn with the data and reading data is by doing it hands on yourself.
Is there any cars so far in your journey that you've worked on? You're like, wow, this is awesome.
Yeah, so during long weekend this year, I got the call up to be a local helper and team coordinator with Absolute Racing for the Lamborghini Super Trofeo. They needed someone from Australia to be able to help them out because they're a Malaysian-based team. And Courtney Steer from Jam Motorsport approached me and said, hey, do you want to spend a week with these people running a team, essentially, and helping them get food, water, do whatever they really need to do. And that was honestly one of the craziest weeks of my life, going from working with Hyundai XLs to Lamborghini Super Trofeo. And that was a team of 12 mechanics, 6 engineers, 8 drivers, a team manager, and all of these people that I was having to help manage because their team coordinator actually got stuck over in Kuala Lumpur. So she actually couldn't fly over to Australia and help us out. So for me, that weekend was just surreal, going from one side of sport being budget racing to basically no budget racing on the other scale. And that was just an absolute eye-opener, watching how they run their teams and how their sport, like how that side of the sport is compared to something like supercars or Toyota 86s. It's just so different in comparison. Yeah, it was the most amazing weekend being able to do that and work with that team.
Yeah. Well, correct me if I'm wrong, but when you're sort of with a team that doesn't have a budget, it's very much about everyone has a certain job. There's lots of jobs going on, where when you're in a more budget team like an XL team or even a supercars team, everyone's got to pitch in when it comes to turning spanners. So am I wrong, or is that sort of how it goes?
Yeah, so with Lamborghini, I think it was the week beforehand, we got a schedule basically, and in the schedule it had the cars, who was the lead mechanic, who was the lead engineer, who's the tire guy. So it was like everyone had their dedicated role. And then I think there was about 4 or 5 different mechanics that would float between all 4 of the cars. And for Absolute Racing, they actually had a crash at round 1 in Sepang, which was a lot bigger than what they had anticipated. So they actually had to send the car to Malaysia again, compared to all the other 3 cars, which actually got put in a shipping container and sent to Adelaide. So they actually didn't see 3 of the cars from Sepang to Adelaide, but they got to see this other Lamborghini, the one that had crashed from Sepang to their warehouse. Then it got air freighted over. And watching how they all, because they had Wednesday and Thursday for setup days. So they actually were working on the cars for 2 days straight. Both days we were there at 8 a.m. Both days we left at 8 p.m. And it was just the hard work and the dedication of these boys, and watching them at the end of the weekend and see how happy they were to be able to do that and be able to work on these cars really made me go, this is what I want to do. Because watching these teams who have all these large group of people, it was crazy just watching how they worked all together and how every single one of them had their own processes.
Yeah, it's super cool when you're able to indulge in sort of such an amazing experience. And how did you really like the experience? Did you come home from it thinking about potential career opportunities in the future?
Yeah, so with that, I was able to network with a couple of the team from Absolute Racing. So I still keep in contact with pretty much all of the drivers. So we had Chris Vanderdrift and Marco Giltrap, both of them driving Porsche Carrera Cup here in Australia at the moment. And then we had a Korean team, and the Koreans were the sweetest people, and I still keep in contact with them. And then we had a Malaysian team and a Thai team, and I still keep in contact with all these people, and they're all really lovely. And then some of the engineers, every now and again, I flick them a message on WhatsApp if I'm up at Tailem Bend and see a car that they like, and he's always reaching out saying, like, if you need any help with anything, like, I'm more than happy to help you. And that weekend with Super Trofeo, they actually had 2 engineers from Brad Jones Racing come and join them. So I was able to meet with those 2, Tony Woodward and it's Tony Woodward and Jason Bonney. I was able to meet with them and network with them and be able to see what they kind of do on the different side of things. And they were saying how different the Lamborghinis are from Super Trofeo. So being able to meet and network with all these people and watch how they work made me go, this is what I want to do on a level like what they're doing. Just because it was amazing watching how they worked as a team and how they, basically how they pack themselves up and they just travel to the next location. It was insane. And watching it back now and like thinking about it, it was the most surreal weekend because they called that amateur level racing. And I was like, okay, what are the XLs then? And like, the XLs are really amateurs for us and they're calling Lamborghini Super Trofeos amateur. I was like, yeah, okay.
Do you know what sort of budgets those guys run
on? From what I know, it's really expensive. It's all done in euros. So just one of the brake calipers was it 1,400 euros just for one brake caliper. I won't even get into like how like my weekend was working as the team coordinator and feeding them and all of that. That was just, it's still surreal to this day how they worked as a team.
Yeah, no, it's super cool that you were given the opportunity to go over there and that the hard work it takes to get into those opportunities, because it's definitely not something that you get gifted. You got to work hard for it. So you should really be proud. I guess that's the best way of saying it. You should be proud that you've managed to get to that. And could you tell us a bit about your experience with? I believe you did a bit of experience with Brad Jones Racing as well.
Yeah, so that was at the Tailem Bend Super Sprint back in August. I teed up with them to do a couple days in their garage and basically watch what they do, how they run on a race weekend. I got to go on the headset during qualifying, I think it was, and got to listen into that. I couldn't get hands-on, unfortunately, due to Supercar personnel restriction, but watching how the team operates was amazing because it was kind of like Super Trofeo. Everyone just walked in and they knew what they needed to do. Everyone had their own job, and like as someone coming from the back side of things with like the XLs and Toyota 86s, I like you get told, hey, can you go do this? Meanwhile, these people, they just went and did it. And for me, that was just crazy watching how these people are so well trained and well disciplined in what they do in the mechanical side of things. And then I was standing over Tony's shoulder during both the races and be able to watch the data. And now some of it actually makes a lot more sense than what it would have 12 months ago for me. And be able to see what he does on a race weekend and how he communicates to his driver. Because his driver is Andre. So be able to listen between Tony and Andre through the whole race and seeing how they work together and all of that. And it was, they're a really great bunch of people as well. Everyone's so happy in that team. And and like Brad Jones himself, he's really lovely. He came up and introduced himself to me and we had a good chat. I got invited to go sit in on their engineers meeting as well, but I unfortunately couldn't go due to other commitments that night. But it was, crazy watching them. And especially like they had that incident in race 1 with Jack. So I think they were there till 10, 11 o'clock that night fixing everything. But if you watch it, they all just knew what they had to get done and they worked together so well as a team. In motorsport, you can't do anything without that well-oiled machine of the team. Yeah. So it was, great to watch and it was such a great experience.
Yeah. So was it the same thing like when you were with Lamborghini? Were you given a sort of a schedule and a piece of paper saying what everyone had to do with the Supercars event? Was it the same sort of thing or was it a little bit different?
With Super Trofeo, it was a bit different because I was actually being paid to work. And my duties ended up going from just being able to stay around the racetrack doing the jobs that they needed and me running out and going and doing things as needed, to me being that person that had to go up to the Lamborghini office and talk to the Lamborghini officials. While with Brad Jones Racing, it was more just observing, getting to network, getting to know people. And for me, being able to do all that was just it was getting to experience that side of motorsport, because it's so different than something smaller. And yeah, I was unfortunate I couldn't get so hands-on as what I wish I could have, but understanding due to the supercar personnel limits and all that sort of thing. So yeah, it's a whole different side of things. And even talking to Tony and Jason, they said from supercars to like Lamborghini, it was so different. Like at the start of a Lamborghini race, they have all the drivers out on the grid with all the cars. They do the grid walk, but every single person in the garage was out on the grid.
Yep.
The team managers, like everyone was there. There was not a single person in our garage. Meanwhile, on a supercar weekend, the engineers are sitting there watching all the temps, making sure everything stays the same, even while they're out on the grid. They don't go. And that was just crazy watching that. And we all kind of went, this is surreal, because this doesn't happen here in Australia like it does overseas.
Yeah. Even with the Formula One teams, it looks like their whole garage is out there. In fact, there's still lots of people in the garage doing their jobs, which they have to do to make the team
for
run.
Sure. And like if you look at Formula One, you think it's that small team, but in reality there's like 80, 90 people that they have in the background as well that don't actually get that luxury to go out on the grid. So yeah,
it's definitely such a cool thing. And I probably should ask this now, what is your goal in motorsport? Where would you like to end up one day?
I mean, obviously the dream would be traveling around with Formula One as a data analyst of some kind, but for now it's really being able to set myself up. Like my dream at the moment is to be able to set myself up to potentially run a team, work with drivers, and help people get where they want to go in motorsport. And yeah, essentially just work my way up through the ladder. Who knows, maybe in 10 years' time, I'll be in supercars working there. Or like for me, I don't want to necessarily put too much of a goal up there. I just want to take it one step at a time and enjoy it as well in the process and help make other people's dreams come true, essentially.
That's such an awesome vision. Because yeah, obviously you do have to take things a step at a time. So it's still very good though. You have a vision, and it's something definitely you can work towards, because it'd be awesome to see, yourself in Formula One day. Either sitting behind the screen or turning spanners. It's still an awesome experience no matter what.
Yeah, for sure. And like it's a bit surreal in a way that this is what my life is, because a year ago for me, I was just racing RC cars every second weekend, and I was going to Melbourne, I was going to Keilor, going to Mildura. Like I was traveling and I had a couple of plans, and then this year it's turned around and it's like, well, you've gone to Bathurst twice, you've gone to Phillip Island, you're running cars, you're running race teams. Like it's really just my whole life's just changed in a blink of an eye because of how crazy motorsport truly is.
Mm-hmm. Eddie, have you ever thought about if you were to, be involved with a Formula One team, for example, racing virtually every weekend? How do you think something like that would go? Would you love it or hate it?
I think I would love it. As long as I have that good group of people around me that I could travel with. I reckon I'd really enjoy spending the time being able to travel and explore the places and see the racetracks and watch a team succeed on a race weekend and all that sort of thing. And I feel like it would just be like the absolute time of my life.
Yeah, it definitely seems like such an awesome environment to be around, because if you look at some of their behind the scenes stuff, it does look like everyone gets along well, which is something which is what you also need in such a it's hard to explain, but Formula One, supercars is a well-oiled machine, but Formula One's on a different level.
Yeah, for sure.
Everything has to be perfect for it to work.
Yeah, and like with supercars, like everything's perfect, but F1 is just that whole nother level up, and yeah, it's crazy. And hopefully, like next year, I'll get to go to the Grand Prix and I'll be able to watch how different it is in comparison to supercars.
Yeah, definitely. I think lots of people will be going to the Grand Prix next year, considering we're going to have two Aussie drivers on the grid.
Yeah,
In Danny Rick and Oscar Piastri.
yeah. But see, it's actually funny with Oscar Piastri. A lot of people don't actually know he actually started racing RC cars before he did go karting and all of that. And I have photos and all of that of my friends who I think there was a couple times where my friends beat him. And there was a couple of times where he just started getting quicker and quicker and quicker. And then obviously he went to go karts and then he started working his way up. But yeah, he actually started racing RC cars with X-Ray Racing, which is who I'm sponsored by here in Adelaide and all of that. So that's his origin story. And a lot of people don't actually know that. They will say, oh, Lewis Hamilton started racing RC cars. But Oscar was actually like a champion here in Australia, and everyone knew him because of his racing here as well.
Yeah. What do you think sort of RC cars, like if someone was to come and ask you what's the best way to get into motorsport, would you point to RC cars as a good starting point?
I first off, I'd talk to them about how much they're actually wanting to spend on it all. Yeah. Because it was a couple of weeks ago we were at a livery reveal for Asher Johnson for his Aussie race car, and we were talking to Joel Heinrich, and Joel goes, yeah, this rear wing is $1,500. And I turned to them and I said, my RC car, brand new with all the electronics, is $1,500. So you can go to a race weekend with an RC car once it's all fully set up, and you can maybe be paying $50 entry fee and then $30 for a set of tires, or however much the set of tires is now. But for like full size stuff, if you're going to the racetrack, you can be paying $850 for an entry fee. Then you've got to pay $300 for a set of tires. And then if you get a panel work damage, you're paying the money for it just adds up. And RC has been really great because it's so good for hand-eye coordination. My hand-eye coordination now is so much better than what it used to be as a kid because I've been able to spend the time doing it. And I've had friends come to the racetrack and I'll stand there and I'll be driving laps around my friends just because it's habit for me. My hand-eye coordination is so good.
Yeah.
But then if I was to get into a race car, it'd be a hell of a lot different because I haven't had that history of driving the car like some other people have. Yeah. So really, I'd turn to someone and say, what are you willing to spend? Are you wanting to go the full mile and go to the race cars, or do you want to start small and then work your way up?
Yeah, that's also a good way of saying it because there's no point telling someone if you don't know what their budget's like. Because you could have someone who's got all the money in the world and they want the easiest way to it, and then you could have someone who doesn't have the money but has the passion. So you gotta weigh it up sometimes.
Yeah.
But for yourself, do you see yourself hopping in a race car in 3 years' time, or 2 years' time, or a year's time?
So it's actually quite funny on this point. At round 3 out at Ballala, I was on my friend Riley's headset for the race, and I had said to him, if you beat, and I won't say the person, a certain driver here in South Australia, I said, if you beat him, I will drive an XL this year. Because for me, driving a car wasn't really one of my favourite things I really wanted to do. I'd do it, but it wasn't like I was like, yeah, let's do it. Riley ended up winning the race. So I was like, oh, I'm screwed. Now I have to drive the XL. So I believe in December we've got a passenger lap and a drive day where they're doing basically beginner laps as well. So that's when I've kind of said, all right, I'll put my hand up, I'll do it. And we've actually got Priya Richards as well. She's coming over and she's going to drive the XL on the same day as me. So the two of us are going to be plotting around the racetrack together, really. I said to myself, I'd do it, but it's not something I'm going to turn around and want to do every other weekend because it's not that side of things is not what I love. It's the background, the behind the scenes is what I love more.
Yeah. My mum's a huge fan of Priya. She follows the Girls on the Grid podcast, and she's such a huge fan of her. So yeah,
Yeah,
she'll
she's
be happy to
lovely.
see that. Whereabouts is the
She's
track day
very lovely.
happening?
So I think it's like the 8th of December out at Malala. And it's like 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. or something like that. So Malala was really great out under lights, and we did round one at the start of the year. It was a 35-degree day, and we were there till 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock. I remember I got home that night at 1 a.m. Then we did another passenger lap night out there, and that was under lights as well. And it's been really good, like with that track. Is for me, I'm an hour and a half between Malalar and Taylor and Bends. So for me, I'm smack bang in the middle, and it doesn't take me long to get to either of them. So yeah.
That's awesome. So when you do the passenger laps, do you ever sit there and in your head critique what they're doing, the driver, or not really?
Well, I actually did passenger laps with my driver Kim back in June, and we kept making jokes that that was how I was going to teach him, and it was how I was going to do things with him, and like that's how I was going to coach him. But I actually did some the day we did passenger laps out at Malala last. I went out with Matt in the first session of the day. So, and he hadn't driven the car since February or whatever it was. So he was getting used to the car, and then we had to come in and do a brake bleed. And then afterwards, I went out with Mitchell McGarry. And it was Mitchell McGarry's first time out at Malala in like a year and a half. It was his first time driving an XL since the Enduro back in November. And Mitch just absolutely sent it. And for me, watching the difference between Matt and Mitch was crazy, because Mitch put a lot more into the curbs and put a lot more trust in the car, while Matt was still kind of warming up and he wasn't wanting to put the trust in the car at that point in time. And then later in the night, I got in the car with one of the other boys, Ben Gallia, and Ben also really pushed it. And be able to watch the difference between the three drivers and how they all handle the cars. And same with Kim, like being able to go from, okay, Kim was driving in the wet while these three are driving in the dry. Like, how different is it? Where's it different on track? And yeah, be able to watch them and just sit there in my head and go, okay, you can do this, or go white, or turn in early. And yeah, it was quite entertaining.
Yeah. So your partner is Matt, right?
Yeah, Matthew Tatani, Mr. Dusty Media.
Yeah. So does he do any racing himself?
Yeah, he does. So when he's not traveling and doing media in the Toyota 86 series, Karting Australia, so many other categories, he races where he can. So round one at Malala in March, he raced. We did Phillip Island in May, and we did Bathurst was it April? And then he hasn't actually been able to race all year, because every time we've had a state round for the XLs, he's actually been at a supercar event. So I've really had to like jump out of my own skin, and I'm working without him at a racetrack. And then is it the 10th, 11th, 12th of November, we've got the state enduro here in Adelaide, and he's driving with Jet Blimus. So he's got his co-driver as Jet. So that's going to be really good, because we were there the weekend. He unfortunately rolled his car. And that weekend we turned to him. We offered to drive with him at the States, at the Enduro. So now that his car is all up and running and he's back ready to go racing, it's going to be very good watching the two of them out on track together that weekend.
Yeah, I remember having to speak to Jet. Yeah, he was I think it was actually a week or two afterwards. He had his rollover, so it's good to see he's back into it now. That
day was really scary, because that was the same weekend as Lamborghini. And I remember standing there with the Lamborghini officials, and all they said was a red flag in the XLs. And because I'm friends with Jet, and then I was friends with a whole heap of other Victorians, and then we actually had about 5 or 6 South Australians. And they said to me, there's been a rollover, but they didn't explain to me who it was. And that's when I started kind of freaking out. And I called Matt, and Matt said, Jet's okay, he's out of the car. And that's why I had to stop and breathe. And we ended up going down and picking him up from hospital. And that was a scary night for sure.
Yeah.
But it's so good to see that at the end of the day, the safety precautions that Motorsport Australia have enforced causes people to survive these crashes.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's motorsport can be crazy sometimes, and sometimes it can be quite boring, and then sometimes it can be super action packed. You never know with motorsport. But if
Yeah.
yeah, have you got anyone you'd like to thank? Sponsor wise, you said you had a few sponsors. So
Yeah. So yeah, I'd like to thank my sponsors, X-Ray Racing Australia. They've really backed me for the last 10 years in the sport. Adelaide RC, Proline Racing, Hobby Wing. Trying to think who else. And then like Team Titani Racing, Air Everywhere Racing, Team Karma. Without Simon, a lot of this wouldn't actually be possible with his mentorship, his guidance, getting me these opportunities. Without him, I wouldn't have been able to do that experience with Brad Jones Racing as well. Yeah, I think that's really about it for the sponsors. Oh, and mum and dad, obviously. They've been really big supporters in all of this, as well as Matt. Like the three of them have really pushed me and helped me out to get to places where I couldn't have been without the three of them.
yeah. Oh well, you can't do it without your parents. Let's be honest. They're quite crucial. So, yeah, I got to thank my parents too. But
Yeah.
yeah. Thanks everyone for tuning into this episode of Grassroots Racer. Don't forget to subscribe for more exciting interviews with Grassroots Racers. And yeah, hope you enjoyed the last one, and I hope you enjoy this one, guys. So yeah, just remember to drive fast and take chances safely, of course.
Thank you so much for having me as well.
That's all right.